So upper right-hand corner.
Yeah. Welcome to Thursday night at the Adventurers Club. Glad you could tune in. A little late start. We're still learning how to do AV stuff at this point, so it's fun. We're training new people. Thanks for hanging out with us and staying tuned with us. I think we have an interesting program for you tonight. We have Rich Abele, who's going to talk about an Africa safari that he did. Fairly extensive, so welcome, Rich. Thanks for coming in tonight. If you would, tell us a little bit about yourself. You're a member of the club.
Yes, I am. I joined the club back in 2014 and I've had some very interesting global experiences and travels. I've presented to the club a few times in the past. And my passion over the years has been international travel and geography, and traveling to remote places like Africa has been one of the places that has always intrigued me. Actually, I used to live in Africa. I lived in Liberia for a while. And so I wanted to go back eventually and see some of the other countries that I did not get to.
How did you end up in Liberia?
Well, when coming out of the Navy back in 1970, I had an opportunity to be a shore-based manager of a offshore oil drilling support program out of Monrovia, Liberia. And I got selected and got trained and went there and managed a 3-ship operation supporting the offshore oil rigs that were drilling for oil, looking for oil off the coast of Liberia.
Seems like onshore is the ideal place to be with offshore oil rigs.
Well, yeah, it was challenging and interesting because it was definitely third world environment.
Right. Now you have a Navy background?
I do. I was commissioned quite a few years ago, actually back in 1965, and became a surface line officer. My specialty was mine warfare, and I was on a minesweeper in Long Beach, and then after 2 years there, I deployed to Vietnam and did an assignment with the River and Harbor Patrol out there in the Mekong River Delta in the Cam Ranh Bay. And then came back to the States and deployed again on a helicopter aircraft carrier to pick up Marines out of Da Nang, South Vietnam as part of Nixon's withdrawal program. Then I left active duty and joined the reserves and was in the reserves for 25 more years and eventually retired as the rank of captain.
Seems like we could have used some of your advice and experience recently. So, and then you did some work with running programs for aerospace?
Yes. While I was working in the Navy, in the Naval Reserve, I had a regular job with Rockwell International on the B-1A program. And then after Carter canceled the program, we were doing research and development for a few years until Reagan got elected. And he brought back the B-1 program, the B-1B, and started it up for full production. And I was on that program for 25 years in support equipment, government contracting. And I did that all the way to the end of the program and then shifted over to the C-17 Globemaster III program. Those are the planes that are currently flying into Kabul, Afghanistan, pulling out refugees
600
and
people
other
at a
American
time.
citizens.
Wow. Quite a program. So tonight we're talking about Africa, and you set out with specific purpose. And if you could tell us a little bit about that. Why did you go there?
I decided to go with the overseas adventure travel in 2019 because I've always wanted to see the big 5. And I had seen 4 of the big 5, but the one elusive animal in that 5 was the leopard. And there was a very good chance on this particular safari destination of 4 countries that I would have a better chance of seeing the leopard in addition to the water buffalo, the rhinoceros, the elephant, and the lion. And fortunately, we were able to see all 5 on this amazing set of safaris that I hope to share with you tonight.
Okay, great. So tell us a little bit about where you went. I think there was a map showing the countries that you visited.
Yes, we got our first slide up yet. And there we go. Okay, here we have a map of South Africa down there at the bottom of Africa, and the three countries immediately north of that are Zimbabwe and Zambia and Botswana, and those are the four countries that we visited. I was a brief introduction to South Africa just by touring Johannesburg, but then we met our group and moved right up to Zimbabwe and continued on to Zambia and finished in Botswana. So those are the countries that we did our main safari bush treks in.
All right. And these were chosen because they had abundant wildlife?
Yes, they did. Now, we were at the end of the dry season, so many of the watering holes were dried up, and some of the rivers had become rather narrow, but it was still a good time to see the animals. We had expert guides, and as you're going to see in the presentation tonight, well guided, excellent transportation, good viewing, lots of fun.
We have another graphic?
All right, here we've got a picture of, briefly, of a visit to Soweto, which is the township right outside of Johannesburg. And we were there on National Heritage Day, saw some of the locals celebrating that. Also, I toured Nelson Mandela's original home, which is now a museum. Also visited the Apartheid Museum, and just took in a one-day tour of the Johannesburg area until we all flew north to go to Harare, the capital of Zimbabwe, where the actual safaris began.
Okay.
So here we are at our first camp, and this is in Zimbabwe, and these are very comfortable camps. They've got a lodging, separate tents for two. I was traveling with a very good friend of mine, Tom, and each tent has full shower facilities, central dining area, and an excellent, very well-trained staff to take care of our needs.
I was going to say, those look kind of nice.
Yeah, it was very first class. This is with the Overseas Adventure Travel Company, who I've been with before, and their setups were very, very good. We were put in safari wagons, and let's go to the next slide. Okay, there's a picture, I think, there of the camp, our lodging, and let's go to the next one. I can't make out what that is.
You have a vehicle?
Oh, a vehicle. Okay. Yeah, we have these Toyota Safari vehicles, and they were made available with each have a spotter and a driver, and the passengers sit in the back. And so it was, that helps. And that was our means of transportation to get into the bush to go view the wildlife. Now, the vehicles, as they go out into the bush, the drivers all are in communication with one another. And so you've got different vehicles throughout the national park, and as any one particular vehicle spots a particular animal, they'll radio the other drivers and say, hey, there's a leopard up here in the tree, or there's a herd of elephants.
They don't keep it to themselves.
Oh, gosh, no. It's show and tell, and they tell. And so we go zooming around to, especially if there's a particular extraordinary game to observe, all of a sudden 4 or 5 vehicles will all ping in on that particular animal to observe them.
Yeah.
Good system.
Nice.
Here's one of our settings. This is a zebra, and in the background is an impala. No shortage of these animals. They were all over.
Could have something to keep the lions fed.
And here is a national park, one of their major watering holes. This watering hole was so large that it attracted multiple animals. You had the members of the antelope family, the kudus, and many other species, as well as small game, and of course the giraffes came down, the warthogs came down, and of course lots of elephants. So lots of first-class animal viewing at this particular watering hole in Zimbabwe.
Now, do the animals tend to intermix?
Well, they actually stay together in their own species. They'll be a few yards apart, and then there'll be another set of animals until the predators arrive. And if a lion shows up, which did not happen, so they are always on the alert. They drink, they look around, they go back to drink, but they're constantly on the alert for predators.
Watching the water for crocodiles.
Oh, well, fortunately this watering hole didn't have any, but there were no predators at this major watering hole, but good animal behavior to watch them coming and going and in getting a much deserved thirst of water because it's the dry season. There wasn't much around.
Sure.
Giraffes up there in the taller bush. The giraffes, of course, have got the great extended neck, and they can reach the growths in the upper trees. And so this is a southern giraffe just prancing, coming through very slowly. You know, very majestic animals, and there was a few of them around. A sounder of warthogs. Groups of animals have got different names. It's really amazing, but like a congress of monkeys or a sounder of warthogs.
Oh,
and here they were.
The first one seems appropriate.
Yeah, very appropriate. That's even better. I like that one. But yeah, another one of the species doing some a little bit of herding here. Okay, we had an opportunity to visit a local Zimbabwean village. The village had a little bit of a perimeter fence around it. And folks, what was really interesting is there were no men in the village. They were all at the local Chinese coal manufacturing facility. It was literally a mining camp, and they were hiring locals. And all the men work there during the day, so the women run the village. They raise the kids, and they have a chief elder, a woman, and they not only gave us a tour of their village, but explained to us what life is really like with no electricity, no refrigeration. They eat nothing but dried fish and maize and corn, well, the type of corn, barley, wheat, which is grown across the stream.
So these are freshwater fish?
They no fishing. No, it's all bought locally in the village. These people seem to get by on very little, and they demonstrated to us while we were there, next slide, is how they build their buildings, which are made out of mud. You have to have the right consistency of mud and water to put in the big coffee can to make a rounded brick. And after it dries, it's then placed around and you build your hut or shelter. And we had a chance to go do that, which is being demonstrated here by one of our one of our guests and our travelers. And we passed. The village woman said, "Hey, that's a good job." And then they showed us what some of the other buildings look like.
Yeah. Do they reinforce the mud with grass or straw or anything, or is it just?
Yeah, they do. Yeah,
mud?
a little bit of some local, whatever's available. Being the dry season, they would
Any
throw a
kind of
little bit in
fiber.
there for sturdiness. Yeah, good point. Then they raise a few goats. I think that's in the upper left. They have one outhouse, but the people are happy. They seem to get along fine. The name of the village was interesting. Dick Village, D-I-C-K. I have no idea why, but when we all
So that's not the tribe name, that's the village name.
That's the name of the village. Now, when we were finished with our visit, I must tell you that we all went into the local town, an actual real town, and we all contributed some US dollars, went into the supermarket, and came back with a vehicle load of fresh food and brought it back to the village and gave it to the women. And they divided up in 10 equal proportions, loaves of bread, cabbage, lettuce, and other fresh fruits and meats, which they would normally never get. And of course, they were ecstatic and very appreciative.
And they ate it all before the men came home.
I hope not. They all took it back to their individual hooches to obviously enjoy, hopefully that evening and over time. But remember, no refrigeration, nothing. They just, this was a real treat.
Interesting. So what did the women do in the village?
They're raising kids.
Yeah.
They're doing any washing. They do the cleaning. They do the sweeping. They raise the goats. They do every single housekeeping and family rearing activity you can imagine from sunup to sundown. That's their job. They run
pretty
the
much
village.
all the real work.
Yeah, they do 99% of the work in the village. The men are employed at the local Chinese coal manufacturing facility, and they come home at nighttime.
Yeah, interesting. So you had mentioned something about their monetary system.
Yeah, some of you may remember that a few years ago, Zimbabwe had a fiscal or monetary crisis, and they had the highest inflation rate in the world, hyperinflation. And at one time, their Zimbabwean dollar was 100 billion Zimbabwean dollars to $1 US. Wow. And they still have them there for sale. And so you could barter with the locals and actually get original Zimbabwean dollars. For a couple of US dollars, we'd get $100 billion note. I didn't bother, but their inflation was out of control until they got smart. They finally shifted to the US dollar as their main currency. So you can shop in the local villages and stores using US dollars, or now the lower inflated Zimbabwean dollars, which was running around 6 to 1. So it had come down dramatically. Of course, the government, what they do is they just lop all the numbers off. And if you have a $100 billion Zimbabwean note, they just take all the numbers off until you're down to 10.
Save
That's
on
how
ink.
it's done. Yeah. So that was an interesting experience.
Fascinating.
So I think, where are we next here? Is that Zambia? Wish I could make that out. Yeah, our next country was Zambia, and that looks like a marketplace where our tour guide, that's Nos. Nos is a very hard-charging woman from Swaziland. Swaziland being an independent little country in the southeast portion of Africa, right above and next to South Africa, and highly educated in England. And she was our tour guide. Of course, spoke fluent multiple languages in Africa as well as English. And she took us to the local marketplace there. I think that's Livingston. And we had to go shopping with her to try the local foods and actually take in them and try them out as we walked around from stall to stall.
So what kinds of foods would you see in the marketplace?
Oh my gosh, I mean, most of them were unpronounceable and unrecognizable. But you would...
Probably just as well.
These are nut products, they're veggies, they're shelled products. Mostly, as I say, really food that you and I here in the U.S. would not recognize. But these are staples for the people over there. They're all dry, they're out there, and you buy them by the kilo or whatever.
Curious, in this area, would there be peppers in use in the cooking, or?
Yeah, I think I saw peppers in the marketplace, different varieties, yes. Certainly peanuts and other forms of shelled products, foods.
Interesting.
And open air stalls for the meat.
Yes.
You know, no refrigeration.
That's the best.
Yeah. If you're going to go shopping for meat, you go to the open air stall. There's the meat you want. They cut it down and you walk away with it.
Find the place with the most flies.
Or the least amount.
Or the least.
So we moved on to the next national park. I think this is Kafue National Park. And this is, of course, our lodge where Tom and I stayed. Now, in some of these national parks, in the compounds, if you will, there's no fences. So as a result, you have to be escorted by a local with a gun to go from the main, let's say, the main camp enclosure and to go to your lodge. And so they would escort you there because any kind of animal can go trekking through. And it was not uncommon for some lions or giraffes or other big critters to actually walk right straight through your camp.
Just lose
and
a tourist
you want to
or
be
two.
sure you could be protected, especially after hours, after sunset. Here we have a vervet monkey. This guy here is a predator. If you turn your head and you've got food on the table right there, he'll come down out of the tree and he'll grab it and he's gone. And somebody left some food out on a table and left the table. And these guys told their buddies, and all of a sudden a swarm of these monkeys come down and the table is empty, and they take it right back up into the tree right in front of you and chow down on what you left behind. So that was very interesting. I had to take a picture of this guy.
Monkeys are gutsy.
They are. While we were here at this camp, we had a chance to go down the local Lufupa River, and while cruising on the boat, you'll notice we have an alligator here. So, no, wait, alligators in America, this guy's a crocodile. This is a big one. So we saw lots of crocodiles. Oh, and then we did a nighttime safari. This was a real highlight because our guide had gotten a radio call. There's a leopard out here. He's been sighted, and it's sunset, dash out there. And we did at high speed, flying over the dirt road, and we found a leopard napping right next to the road on a rock. And this is a photo I took of him. He woke up, and while we were there, 2 or 3 other vehicles showed up. You don't move, you just photo. And he moved up and down, and he walked right next to us. And after he was done checking us out, he jumped back onto the rock and went back to sleep. So this was a nighttime viewing of a leopard. Very, very special.
So are they, do you know, are they nocturnal normally, or are they?
Yeah, they do a lot of hunting at nighttime.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have very good eyesight at night. Yes, that's one of their primary hunting times. This is just, oh yes, we went to off-road. Our guide said, hey, for a few extra bucks, we can go and see a herd of rhinoceroses that are being protected by some local militia, guards.
Yeah.
And for a few bucks, which we all contributed, and that is all for not only to pay these guys, but to buy their bales of hay, sorry. And so here we are, a few of us standing around, and this is a group of protected white rhinoceroses. If it wasn't for the guards, those guys would be poached and their horns would be cut off. So they are fully protected 24/7.
So the rhinoceros eat the hay?
Yes, yes, and they bring in water. And they actually have tubs of water for them because there's no water in the area because of the dry season. And so they are fed and watered and taken care of by these rangers or guards.
Keep them from wandering
And that's
off.
part of their program to save endangered species.
Yeah.
Very impressed.
Yeah, I know there are a number of programs where armed rangers
Yes.
protect the rhinos in a number of countries.
Very true. And this was an excellent example of that.
And both rangers and poachers get killed frequently.
Yes, that does happen. Yeah, especially like in places like Rwanda and Uganda, and even in Kenya for that matter. Yeah, here's a kudu we saw, a magnificent member of the antelope family, or if you will. Who else we got? Next. Ah, yes, and no shortage of browsing giraffes. They would come prancing across your roadways. They were used to vehicles, and they would stop, look, cross the road. You always give animals, of course, the right of way. You remain quiet, silent, so that you can take their picture, pay your respects, let them move on, and browse. And, of course, we came across multiple herds of elephants. And here's a mama elephant, and she's nursing her newborn. So some very good elephant behavior on the. We saw one elephant that had been poached, and it was unfortunately was rotting over the side of the road. Our guide told us it was probably 5 to 7 days old. The tusks had been removed. Some of the predators, the hyenas and other animals, had already started to feed on the carcass, but most of the carcass was still intact. But the aroma was less desirable.
Can imagine.
Yes, and one of the highlights, of course, was our next sighting of the leopard. This is a daytime sighting, and one of the rangers, again, saw it, notified everybody else. We all zoomed in. We had 5 or 6 vehicles around, and this guy's sound asleep, right smack in the middle of the day. And we waited, and we waited, and we waited, and after an hour, he woke up. Next. And there he is. And he's sitting up there on the branch, and he's just getting the cobwebs out of his eyes, and he's looking at all of us. We found out the same leopard the next day got an impala, and while I didn't see it, we saw a picture later, he got the impala and the small one and brought it up under the tree, which is what they do to protect their kill. And so this guy was busy looking for his next meal. They will go about 5 days before they need to feed again.
Well, I always thought that was amazing, just the sheer strength that it takes to haul.
All in the jaws.
I can't even haul myself up a tree.
I know. Good point. So we were very blessed with this particular leopard sighting. And then we saw a pack of wild dogs, and the alpha male is right there in front. They interbreed, so they have multiple colors, white, brown, and black, and they're romping all over the place looking for their next meal. And over here by this particular little lakeside, here's a mammoth, I think a baboon of some sort with her newborn right on the top, and that's how they get their free ride. They're going down for a drink of water. So good monkey and baboon behavior along the lakeside here. Ah, yes, and of course the hippos. The hippos are everywhere. They are Africa's most dangerous animal. They kill more people than the crocodiles do. And there's a couple of them here, and they like to, play the games of who can open their mouth the biggest and do all this. And we did see some good hippo behavior. Ah, yes, and our third sighting. Most people, folks, do not ever see 3 leopards on one safari, but we did. And this guy was literally napping underneath a dead log. And we just surrounded him with vehicles and waited for him to wake up. And he did. And he came out and he walked right by every vehicle, checking us out, and went off and hid in a bush. And let's see if we have another picture of him. Well, that was it. But anyway, great opportunity for lots of photos. And we came across a herd of wildebeest. And as many of you know, these are the main animals up there in Kenya and Tanzania for the Great Migration, which is going on right now. So this small herd of wildebeest came passing through.
So just sidetrack, if for those who don't know what the Great Migration is.
The Great Migration occurs generally roughly between July and about September. It's about a 3-month migration from the Serengeti in the middle or so of Kenya and moves up into, or out of Tanzania rather, and moves up into Kenya, up into the Masai Mara. And it's an annual migration to go up there following the rains, which are bringing the green plants up and the growth of the grasses. And that is a 1 million animal plus migration of zebras and wildebeest. And of course, the predators follow them, primarily the lions. Then they birth during the rainy season for the calves, and then they all head south to get back down to the green pastures and start up the cycle all over again. That's a major. I have not been on the major migration, but it's on my bucket list.
I've seen some video of some. It's amazing.
Where they cross the rivers.
Yeah, one of these
crocs
days.
are waiting. Yes.
Yes.
What else have we got here next? We came across a herd of Cape buffalo. This is one of the big 5. And as soon as we saw them, somebody spooked the herd and they went into a stampede. I managed to get a video of that, and they crossed in front of us, and then all of a sudden they stopped. And that was the shot right here. They've slowed their run down, and these animals can be very dangerous, and you give them lots of room, you stay quiet, let them pass.
Yes.
The Cape buffalo. And what do we have here? Oh, the canoes. These are the mokoros. We're now in the Okavango Delta, and this is one of the biggest, wettest areas of Africa. It gets huge during the rainy season and gets smaller, obviously, in the dry season. These are professional polers. You know, they pole down the side of the dugout canoe, called mokoros. And in the next picture, I think you're going to see us. Yes, and there's yours truly, and our mokoro polar behind us. I talked to the polars and asked, how many years have you guys been doing this? And one guy said, this is my 14th year of poling. My driver, or polar, had been doing this for 7 years. Imagine doing this, just this kind of work for that long.
Wow.
It was spectacular because we got to see a lot of water-borne animals feeding along the edges and lots of bird life.
Do they have a lot of crocodiles in the area here?
We saw a few on the distant shore, but not many. It was mostly birds in this particular case at this time of the day. And we were there also for the sunset.
It's an occupation to keep you in good shape anyway.
Yeah, these guys
At least for a while.
Yeah. And their goal, of course, is to give you a safe ride or a canoe experience out into the Delta and get you back in time for happy hour.
Yes.
Next. Yes. Okay, and here is sunset across the Delta, and that's my tent mate, Tom, there in the left-hand corner. I submitted this to a photography contest, and I did not win, unfortunately. But I thought it was
an amazing photo.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, well, we moved around from one camp to another within these countries, and most of them were by small airplane. And these are on dirt strips. And the pilots are all locals. And our particular pilot in this particular case was a gal. And she was one of the few women in the Zambian Airlines that flew airplanes. And she was spot on, did a great job. And, you know, short takeoff and landing, holds 8 to 10 passengers. They fly you to the next landing strip, and you're at another camp. And what's coming up? Okay, yeah, there they are. And we're now back in Victoria Falls. We're at the Zambian-Zimbabwean border. And this is the famous, one of the 7 wonders of the world, the famous Victoria Falls. And of course, that was on our itinerary. We had to check it out. And let's take a look. Next. All right, here's the falls. It's at the end of the dry season. There's normally about 37 spillways, and there was less than half of that at this time because the water amounts had declined. But it's still spectacular, and if you look closer, you'll see the rainbows. And you walk along the cliffs, all along, looking at the spillways across the way. And the Zambezi River runs along the bottom. Yeah. And one of our former presidents, Michael Lawler, Michael and his wife Barbara did a river run down the Zambezi River right in and around the bridge there a few years ago, and had a harrowing experience, which I remember he shared with the rest of the club. Anyway, it's a spectacular bridge. Is that next? Let's take a look. Yeah, there's the Victoria Falls Bridge. This was, folks, designed in 1902 and 03, built and exported to Northern Rhodesia there, or Zimbabwe, in 1904. And it was like a Tinker Toy set. They had reassembled it in England, put it together, it worked. They disassembled it, sent it to Africa in 2 shipments. One half went to one side of the river, the other half went to the other side of the river. They constructed it, and the 2 sides met together.
Joined in the middle.
That bridge has been recertified 3 times. It's done every 50 years, just got its 100th year anniversary certification, and it's still working today, and you still can drive and walk across the Victoria Falls Bridge, which nobody expected to last this long.
Yeah, you would think if nothing else in that environment, just all the moisture would.
Yeah. So this was a spectacular opportunity. And next, I think you'll see we took a tour underneath the bridge. You had to put on safety harnesses with double carabiners. Here I am suiting up. And next, I think we'll see, yes, and that's what the carabiner looks like. You are actually going down a metal cable from one side of the cliffs across the river to the other side, and you have 27 stops you have to make with your double carabiners. And you always have one carabiner on at all times.
Yes.
You move over the stop or the obstruction, put the other one on, pass by, put the second one on, and move on. And
never unhook both.
And you are never unhooked. And the Zambezi is 250 feet below you, as you can see. Next picture. And there is the hookup apparatus as we worked our way across. It was thrilling. And as we were going underneath the bridge, going from one obstruction to another, you see the maintenance crew. It's like painting a bridge. You start at one end, get to the other, it's time to do it all over again.
Start over.
These crews are out there every single day inspecting and painting the bridge to keep its maintenance up. Very spectacular and reassuring.
Yes.
Here's Tom and I in our river cruise on the Zambezi, and it's our final dinner, and we're hosting with a couple of glasses of wine and a little rum and coke, and very happy with our extraordinary safari expedition. And I think that's it.
Very nice. Yep. These are all ex-colonial countries.
Yeah, these are all former British colonies.
So how are they doing kind of post-colonial period?
Most of these former British Crown colonies had sought independence as early as 1959. Most started in 1960, and many finished by around 1965, 66. A few of them have turned into dictators. Many of you have heard about them, Central African Republic and others. Some have turned to democracy quite successfully, and others are in between. And these particular 3 countries all had democratic parliaments, if you will, and are doing fairly well, except for like Zimbabwe. You had the dictator there of Zimbabwe. I'm trying to remember his name. Someone help me. Mugabe. Mugabe was what, 33 years, some incredible length of time. He was an original president from the day of independence, and he just passed away, what, a couple years ago at 94, 95. He's one of those guys that hung on to power forever, and of course, the country didn't develop, and he kicked out all the Brit colonials who were, of course, doing all the food production, and your white middle class disappeared, and all of a sudden the country went into the toilet. This is very typical of a number of the countries there in Africa. Botswana is very developed. It's got a great mining, primarily diamond mining economy, as well as tourism, and Zambia is doing extremely well as well. So it all depends upon which country you're going to see how they're doing.
Yeah.
It varies.
Yeah, it's been interesting to see the South Africa, all of its evolutions and problems, and also back to you were talking about the number of languages. I was interested in South Africa to learn that their flag has so many colors because they had to represent so many different unique tribes.
That's correct.
It's so small and isolated.
Yeah, the flags are often done because of, like, the rising sun might be yellow, the setting sun would be red, the green depicts the greenery, and they have different meanings of the colors in their flags and so forth, or maybe the number of provinces based on the stars. So if you look at the different flags of the different countries and go on, Google and look them up, they'll explain to you how that flag was developed. And it's rather interesting. A lot of history in these countries, these former colonies.
Yeah.
But most of the infrastructure is really in place left over from the colonial days. Like most of the buildings downtown, they weren't built in not modern times, they were built in colonial times. The street layouts, the infrastructure, most of it is still based on the French or the British method of colonial development.
And built to last.
It's still there, yeah.
So I have an important question. The
Sure.
wine you were drinking, was it South African?
The wine there, yes, it was. Yes, and not bad. They did a good job. And it was very reasonable. $1.50 a glass.
Wow.
You wouldn't find that in the States.
No. Well, they have some great wines
They were
there.
very reasonable.
Okay. Would you like to take some questions?
Yeah, absolutely.
If there are any.
Please.
I'm going to take a couple questions from the audience. I see Steve. Looks like you got one.
Hi, I just have a quick question. It's just kind of mundane, but when you hire a tour guide like that woman in Zimbabwe, I think it was, what do you pay those? What do you pay to have a guide, and what do they? What do you have to do when you with them? Do you pay for their meals as well on top of it? And I don't know what the protocol is. I've always wanted to hire a guide when I went to a country.
Okay. Good question. I was with Overseas Adventure Travel, which is a major travel organization out of Boston, Massachusetts. And they are the ones that set up all these tours. They are the ones responsible for the hiring of the guides. They're all vetted, they're all interviewed, they're checked on their backgrounds, their language skills, and so forth, and then they're trained. They're trained to be tour guides if they haven't been already, and then they're brought in as employees. So all the homework is done by OAT with and for the benefit of the tour guide. So they're paid by OAT, and then if they do a good job, we as the travelers put together our tips, and they are rewarded handsomely. So Nos, N-O-S-S, her real African name was this long. She was taken care of extraordinarily well as our tour guide. Let me throw in one item. She wants to be the new mayor of Victoria Falls. And she's lobbying today to be the mayor because she said she can do a better job. So we all wished her well. And based on her gutsy attitude and her people skills, I think she has a good chance. That's how the tour guides with the professional tour companies are hired by people from the States or wherever the tour company is based in.
Okay.
So you talked a little bit about Mugabe, but when you were there, Jacob Zuma had been arrested already. There was riots in South Africa, Johannesburg. Did you have any issues in Johannesburg with the riots when you were there?
Okay, I was there in the fall of 2019, and I don't recall the riots occurring at that time. I think they were, a little later. I could be wrong. The answer is no. I never felt in danger, and there were no issues while I was in Johannesburg, in Soweto, in that area before I left the country to go north. So I've been following the activities and the problems with Zuma and his political party and all the locals, but that was not an issue where we were.
So, what kind of gear did you take with you? I'm specifically wondering about camera gear and then clothing. What kind of considerations did you make for that?
OAT does a wonderful job. They tell you the season you're going in, they give you a list of recommended clothing, and of course you want to go with lightweight stuff, easy to wash, and and not bright colors. Bright colors are no-nos because certain animals are offended and will be bothered if you show up in the wrong colors. So they tell you specifically, and I think reds and blues were on the no-no list. You go with the pastels, the light colors, and of course they're much more user-friendly in terms of the sun. You go with lightweights, and go with tennis-type shoes, and you definitely want long pants. You should have long pants. Some guys went with shorts, but there are little bitey no-see-ums that'll come along. And most of the time, because of the sun, you want to take shirts that will be long sleeve, capable of being rolled up. And they will provide you with a safari hat, the big wide brim one to keep the sun off you, and you can also bring your own ball cap. So yes, they give you an extensive list of equipment, or water bottles and camera gear and so forth, and chargers, because they provide 115-volt power right there in the village, which is amazing. You can recharge everything you've got right there in the camp, which is very handy for the next day. I hope that answered your question.
Hey Rich, your safari sounds like a wonderful experience. If you were to go back to Africa, where would you go?
Oh, my very next trip to Africa is definitely going to be Kenya. And one of our members, Alan Feldstein, who is not here, I just contacted him yesterday, and he responded from Kenya. And he's in Tanzania, and he sent his regrets for not being here tonight. But Alan and I have worked out a deal where as soon as this pandemic passes and I can get over there, he's going to set up a migration safari trip for me. And it's going to start in Tanzania and cross the Mara River and watch the famous, crocodiles feasting on and preying on the zebras and the wildebeest as they cross the river. That's the goal of my trip, and to get up from the Masai Mara. So I think those two countries, and a side trip to Rwanda and Uganda to see the great gorillas.
Yeah.
So I think that's where I'm headed next.
So the most popular videos are always the ones where the animal gets away.
Dang. Yeah, right.
Okay. All right. Well, Rich, thank you very much for tonight.
My pleasure.
Enjoyed your
Thank you
talk.
for having me.
Appreciate you coming down.
That's good.
So, to all of you watching tonight, thank you for your patience and thank you for tuning in. If you like what you saw, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and follow us on Spotify if you like taking us on the road in your car. Occupy your time on the way to work with something creative and interesting. Everyone have a great night. Thanks for dropping in.
Okay, thank you. All right, how about a handshake? Go
Thank
ahead,
you.
for the camera. Go ahead.
Real quick, Rich, we also have a television club.
Come on, Barbara.